Hi everyone, welcome to the Highlights from Ukraine podcast, your daily audio summary of the latest news reported in the Ukrainian media. My name is Artem, and here is the news. 716 days less the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Newly appointed Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, Oleksandr Syrsky, spoke about the new tasks that he faces now, reports Ukrainska Pravda. First of all, it is clear and detailed planning of actions of all military administration bodies, groupings, formations, and units, taking into account the needs of the front line for the latest weapons that come from international partners. According to Syrsky, the task of headquarters at all levels is to know all the needs of the troops deployed without exception and own the situation in each of the areas. Syrsky stressed that personnel qualifications of military management bodies is crucial for the development and successful implementation of plans. The main value of the Ukrainian army, he stressed, is the life and health of military personnel. So now it remains more relevant than ever to maintain a balance between performing combat missions and giving units a chance for a break as well as to train. Another priority is the introduction of new technical solutions and scaling of successful experience, in particular the use of drones and modern electronic warfare assets. Yesterday, Defense Minister Rustem Umerov introduced Syrsky to the General Staff at a ceremony also attended by former Commander-in-Chief Valery Zaluzhny, reports LBUA. Umerov and Syrsky also held the first working meeting to discuss the Army's detailed action plan for 2024. They touched upon the need for an effective system of unit rotations and rest, improving the quality of drills, maintaining training centers, preparing new instructors, and learning from modern experience. Separate attention has been paid to a new branch of the Ukrainian Armed Forces, the Unmanned Systems Forces. By the way, we've discussed replacement of Ukraine's Commander-in-Chief with a military expert for one of our Long Talk episodes. To be among the first to hear it, subscribe to our Patreon. The subscription starts just from $5. It's not only the way to get these episodes first, but also a way to support the podcast, as we can produce our daily and Long Talk episodes only with your support. Thank you. President of Ukraine Volodymyr Zelensky informed in his evening video address that he met with a bipartisan delegation from the US Congress led by the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee. Quote, "I briefed them on the current situation on the battlefield, critical threats, and the necessity of continuing support for our defense," unquote. They also talked about the missile defense systems, specifically the Patriots and long-range weapons, especially ATACMS missiles with the 300 kilometers range, for which unfortunately there is still no decision, said the president. Zelensky thanked the US for its leadership and contribution to the defense of Ukrainian independence and democracy from the early days of the full-scale war. We would really appreciate if you could rate us, ideally with 5 stars, and leave a glowing review in the app where you are listening to this podcast, Google Podcast, Apple Podcast, Spotify, and others. This way more people would learn about the podcast and truth about Russia's invasion of Ukraine. According to Bloomberg sources, Ukraine is developing a plan that will help it get the necessary funds and cover the budget deficit in the event that financial assistance from the United States is blocked, reports Ekonomiczna Pravda. This plan includes 3 key elements: expanding domestic bond sales, raising taxes, and cutting spending. According to the agency, Ukrainian officials are proposing this plan to the IMF during a 3-day visit of its staff to Ukraine next week. Although Ukraine fulfills its obligations, the Ministry of Finance and the National Bank believes that there is a risk that the IMF Board of Directors will not approve the next loan disbursement without a fiscal plan, especially if the US funds are still blocked. According to the IMF program, Kyiv should receive this year $5.3 billion. Bloomberg writes that the main sources of funds to replace American ones is the expansion of domestic government borrowing. Ukrainian banks have a high level of liquidity, and the government expects them to continue investing in high-yield government bonds. It could generate at least $5 billion in revenue this year. The government can also raise taxes or cut spending as needed. This plan is only for the situation if no foreign aid comes, but both Ukraine and the IMF expect aid to resume in the coming months. Thank you for listening to the Highlights from Ukraine podcast. We're a commercial initiative of just two people, and we need your help to grow. Share information about the podcast, rate us in the app, subscribe to our Patreon. With your support, we are getting better. We call on you to demand from governments of your countries to impose the toughest sanctions possible on Russia and its citizens to stop their invasion of Ukraine.